Hello, my name is Carlos Erban, and today I'm going to talk to you how to get great shots in sports events such as baseball at night with very inexpensive equipment and some simple editing to get a really good shot. So this is from last night's game. This is a shot I took of Giancarlo Stanton, actually Mike Stanton. And you would think, well, this is not a difficult shot if I'm standing or if I have my monopod by first base and I have my 300 2.8 or my 400 lens with my super expensive camera and like $20,000 worth of gear. Well, guess what? I'm gonna show you where I was sitting and the very inexpensive gear that I was using. Look, this is me. Look where I'm sitting. I'm like in the third section, all the way in the back, with my 28 to 300 lens, which is not an expensive lens, and my D7000. So what I want to show you, some of the things that I did to take this shot, because a lot of people are thinking, well, you know what? I don't even have the 28 to 300 lens, which is a lens, by the way, that you can get these days for $900. Well, you don't even need a 28 to 300. You can get a 70 to 300 lens, which used you can get for $340. And the D7000 you can get, now that the D7100 has come out, you can probably get for, used $700. So you're talking about $700 on a D7000 used and a 70 to 300 for about $300, right? And again, if you can afford the more expensive lens, you should. I mean, I'm not suggesting that this is what you should buy, but what I'm saying is, look, for essentially under $1,000, sitting all the way in the back, you can get this shot. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how I took this shot. Well, first of all, and I'm going to talk a lot of topics here. I'm going to touch on a lot of topics here. I'm going to talk about autofocus. I'm going to talk about ISO, shutter speed, and so on. When I took this shot, so let me go to this program, the Nikon program, because one of the advantages of the Nikon program is that, hold on a second, so here I'm in Lightroom. I'm going to go and do a shift tab, right? So now I'm back to my Lightroom. Now I'm gonna go to the VNX2 program, which comes with a Nikon camera. So when I take this shot, so let me give you a little bit of a tip. First of all, let's talk about the settings. The ideal shutter speed for this type of picture would be at least 1/1500th of a second. Now, why is it that I'm at 1/800th of a second? Well, the reason is because I'm at 5.6. Now, if I had a 2.8 lens, okay, I could go to easily 1600ths of a second, and I'm still at f4, so I have another stop to go, so I could lower my ISO to 1200. So that's why, even from as far as I was, if you had a 300 2.8 or a 70 to 200 2.8, let's say, you were closer, then of course you would get a much better shot. But this video is not about how to get great shots with expensive lenses and expensive cameras, because I truly believe that anybody can do that. I mean, this is how to get this shot with inexpensive gear. So first of all, in terms of the reason why I'm using this program is because you can see here clearly where the focus point was and the settings that I was using. The settings that I was using was AFC, so that's the continuous dynamic mode, okay, and I was using 9 points. So what I do is I pre-focus. So let's look at before the pitch even started. So what I do is I pre-focus here in the hands. And you can do the hands or you can do the face, but since I know that all the action is going to be in the swing, I rather pre-focus here, because I want to make sure that this whole area is in focus. This is where the motion is. Okay, so I pre-focus here, and when I say pre-focus, that means I'm just pressing the shutter button halfway and making sure it's in focus and as still as I can. Okay, and then I press the shutter button, and when I press the shutter button, you know, it does 6 frames per second, so it's taking all these pictures, right? Obviously, if you had a camera that had 10 or 11 frames per second, I would get more frames. I would get a frame from here and this one and between this one. So obviously, again, I'm not saying that this is the same as the super expensive camera. I'm just showing you how to get a quality shot with inexpensive gear. Okay, so this is the shot. Okay, so ideally I would have preferred to be in focus here, but you know, by being pre-focused in here by the hands, I was close enough that my 9 points helped me get that in focus. Now you're probably thinking, well, the ball is not, you know, perfectly sharp and it's not super still. Well, that's what I gave up by going to 1/800 of a second. When I'm at 1/800 of a second, I knew that I was underexposed by about 2/3 of a stop. How did I know that? By looking at my histogram. You can see it right here. And if I just do 2/3 of a stop, okay, you can see now it's in perfect exposure. So I knew that I could easily recover 2/3 of a stop, you know, if I was just a little bit under. By the way, I just noticed that I had exposure compensation here at 0.3, and it doesn't matter because I was in manual. This shouldn't have been in 0.3 negative. That was one of the things I was shooting with flash before, and aperture priority, and you know, just stay there. In terms of the metering, I was using matrix, which is typically what I use. I want to get an average exposure of all this. You can also do center weighted. I mean, I have a whole other video on that. In this particular case, center weighted would have worked just as well. White balance, I have it on auto. I know that because I'm shooting raw, if I want to make small adjustments, I can do that later. But since this is a tricky lighting situation, auto does a nice enough job that I can then, you know, I have a good starting point and I can make changes later. Okay, so now let's switch to Lightroom to see how I process this picture. Basically, so this is my original picture. So the first thing that I do, and you know, again, this is kind of everything together. As you guys know, I do Lightroom, I do, you know, photography. So, you know, I'm resetting everything here so that it goes back to the way it originally was. So I already know I'm about 2/3 underexposed. So let's see. Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's pretty good right there. I think that's well exposed. As a matter of fact, let me. I think the proper way to start is not with the exposure. It's actually with the cropping, because this is a 16 megapixel picture, so I can crop, you know, a little bit, not super, and still have like a 12 megapixel picture. Even if you had 12, that would be good too. Now, this is something that is bothering me a lot, and I'll be honest with you, it's easy to take off in Photoshop, but if I just cropped a little bit more, you know, and again, I'm kind of using also my rules of thirds here. Okay, I'm going to, you see, this is where I want the focus to be, right here, the hitter and where the ball is. So I can, you know, I think I can get away without having even to go to Photoshop. So this is the crop that I'm gonna stick with. Okay, so I have this crop. Now that I have my crop, then I should do my exposure adjustment. So I'm gonna do my, you know, 0.6. By the way, if I would have done auto, it says 0.45, but it's taking everything. I really care about the player. Oh, what did I do? I did Shift Tab, sorry. What I wanted to do was Control Z. Control Z goes back to the way it was. Maybe, you know, just right there. Okay, so I'm staying here in this mode. After I do my exposure, I make small adjustments to the white balance. The white balance actually looks pretty good, but since I see here a gray, I'm gonna take advantage of that gray, use my dropper here and see if I can improve it a little bit. See, here I have my red, green and blue, right, channels, and I want all those numbers to be almost identical. So that's close enough. So let's see. When you do that, it looks a little pinkish for my taste. So let's see. Let's try that again. Maybe let's find another gray area here. Let's try that one. No, it looks fine. I mean, maybe I'm seeing a little bit pinkish. Maybe it's just me. Well, that's good enough. The important thing when it comes to white balance is that it's pleasant and the skin colors look realistic. Okay. Now you notice that when I zoom 1 to 1, you can it's very visible, the noise, but nobody's looking at pictures like that except photographers. Okay. Even in Sports Illustrated, if you get a magnifying glass, you're gonna see them with noise. So I'm not too worried about the noise right now. I actually want to get more detail here in the face, so I may sharpen, even though sharpening is a little risky when you have already noise. So let me see how I'm doing on everything else. Okay, so let me go now to my whites and blacks. Okay, so typically when I have to make big adjustments, I go over here, and when I have to make small adjustments, I go to the whites and the blacks. Here I'm seeing just small adjustments. So let me establish a white point. The way you do that is you can move this, and when you see the triangle here on the upper right, that's your white point, and I double click here on the whites, that resets it. Or I can do Alt, right, and that's my white point right there. You just want to establish a little bit of a white point. And then the blacks, here you can go a little farther. I don't care about the detail of the empire, so I can use that to get a little bit more contrast. Now before I go to the sharpening, I always like to play a little bit with the clarity. You see how the clarity already is doing to the face what I wanted to do. You see now I'm starting to get, let me do a shift tab so we can see. You see how the face now is, it's well defined, the ear, and that's the type of detail that I was looking for. Okay, I can even push it a little bit more. Okay, and I don't think I'm getting. Now you're probably thinking, oh, but look at all this noise here. Again, nobody looks at it this way, but we're gonna take care of that very, very soon and very, very easily. I think at this point I don't even know if I'm gonna do any sharpening. Okay, I have here my sharpening. Let me just look at the. So if you do Alt and the radius, you can play a little bit with the radius. Be careful, because now it's adding a lot more noise. So let's leave it there. I think now we're starting to push it. Noise reduction, I don't want to touch that right now, because let me show you what happens. If I move it, I lose all the detail. Okay, and this is an athlete. I'm not trying to smoothen the face, so I'm actually gonna leave the noise reduction, the noise the way it is right now. And I did something I forgot to show you here, is that the noise reduction in my camera for the highest ISO, I leave it on high. So the camera already did noise reduction in this particular case. Okay, so what else can we do here? Well, I always like to do the profile, of the lens. That always helps. I can fool around a little bit with the distortion, so it makes it look like I was probably a little closer. Let's see the vertical. No, it just looks strange. Well, that doesn't look too bad. That still looks natural. Leave it there. That's fine. Again, this is a little bit. Now, again, I want the emphasis right here. I want this to stand out. So highlight priority, that I want to use. You see? So I want the player to stand out. Great. That's good. The center point a little bit there. See, this is already taking care of this thing in the back. But you know how professional lenses allow you to blur that background really nicely? Well, if you want to do that, all you have to do is just do an adjustment brush here, double click the effect. So since we're trying to blur this area, right, what we do is the opposite of sharpness and clarity. So let's just put it, I'm going to exaggerate and put the clarity and the sharpness all the way to the left. And if we have to readjust, we can readjust. Okay, let's put here my brush, and then just do one of these, right? By the way, we can do this and see what we're painting. Do I have, yeah, auto mask? That's good. I don't want to paint in the on the player. That's the most important thing. I want the player to be perfectly sharp. Okay. We can take the auto mask off, because right now what's happening is not painting all the grass, and I want to paint all this. It's just when I get close to the player that I have to be careful. Oh, there you go. So now I click auto mask so that it doesn't affect my player. Okay, so let's see. That's nice, look. And it took care of a lot of that noise problem. I can even do a little bit here too. Okay, I want the player to stand out. So when you do that vignetting and you do the blurring around the edges and the background, it just makes the player stand out so much more. Okay, so let's see how this compared to the super professionals, cameras and photographers. Well, this is a picture taken from very close. Of course, he has more detail, but this is not bad, all things considered. I mean, we are very far away and with under $1,000 worth of gear. So I think this is again, this is about how to get the best out of inexpensive gear even when you're really far away, and the point is that you can easily do that without having professional gear on. Okay, well, thank you very much. I hope you like this video and subscribe to my channel, and if you have any comments or questions, please put them in the video, and I always read the comments, so if there is a question, I'll be more than happy to try to answer it. Thank you very much. Bye.